There's a pretty well-worn path for famous graduation speeches. Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, even David Foster Wallace, all incredible orators with very divergent life experiences that had their graduation speeches molded into the same basic shape by the prosaic requirements of the moment. These speeches, unlike mine here, live forever now in text and YouTube clips, simultaneously specific to the audience, while also detached from time and space and somehow applicable to everybody graduating from anything at any time. There's first the self-effacing opening that nobody buys, the personal anecdote that's revealing but not too revealing, lest an out-of-context clip of the cousin's shaky phone footage makes it to TMZ. There's the comedic relief about 1/3 of the way in, the nostalgic nod to the parents who are silently stewing in the back about what the difference in cost between this degree and a state school would have looked like in the form of a home edition. And finally, of course, there's the grand closing benediction. After being brought low about the state of the world or the challenges faced by this generation, we're all lifted up by the speaker's exaltation of the limitless possibilities facing this crop of graduates. Here, finally, is our salvation, granted by I who have succeeded, upon those who wish to succeed, fidgeting restlessly before me as I bless them, the back of their mortarboards flicking chaotically like a flock of confused seagulls, a physical manifestation of their desire for the speaker to shut up. Now, I'm not denigrating these speeches. I'm commiserating. There's a stultifying structure to the occasion. You start with a moment that has been granted overinflated importance in the lives of the attendees by one of Hollywood's 17 available prepackaged rom-com endings, when the lived reality of graduates is actually generally dominated by the sensation of baking under the sun in non-breathable rented robes, starched stiff with the sweat of dozens of those who have graduated before you, each of whom had to be subjected to equally self-important graduation speakers. Now, it's not all bad. The boredom and the rapid dehydration are generally punctuated by moments of levity, such as the performative adjusting of microphone heights between professors, or the dean mispronouncing the names of your colleagues when you took the time to look up their names and click the little speaker button in Google before you greeted them in study group 2 years ago. I don't have to tell you all this because you've all been through at least 2 or 3 of these graduations yourself. You've sat through the self-aggrandizing speeches, the heat, the pictures of the grandparents, they themselves just minutes from collapsing on the lawn. And then, out of sight of your family, your robe unzipped to finally show off the fancy dresser suit you foolishly picked out to hide under thick nylon, you huddled with your now former classmates, sucking on vape pens, and you collectively sighed, "Shit, I can't believe I signed up to go back to school and do this all over again." Well, the gods, sitting all the way up on Olympus, which is now mortgaged by Deutsche Bank and subject to an IMF settlement, they heard your complaints about celebrating milestones and they answered your prayers. And here we are. When I was asked to be the faculty speaker back in January, which was roughly 17 years ago, I was incredibly honored. Those of you who have been foolish enough to sign up for my classes have heard my jokes about being a fake professor, one of the academically unwashed, along with Andy Grotto, looking to pull down the ivory tower from within. Stanford University is so enamored with what I contribute to its academic mission that 6 months after joining, they sent me a paper letter from the provost reminding me that the title of adjunct professor had been eliminated and that I should in no way call myself professor under any circumstances, especially when standing in front of 120 students who are each paying an annual BMW 5 Series for the privilege. So to be chosen by the students to give this talk really was an honor. The MTV Movie Award for someone locked out of the Lifetime Achievement Oscar known as tenure. But I can't thank you folks anymore because I admit I was comforted by the idea of a typical graduation speech in front of Encina Hall, able to read the crowd, buoyed by the theatrics of the day and the awkwardly mistimed laughs of Dr. Fukuyama sitting behind me. But now I have to address you in this compressed little video stream that jerks whenever my kids simultaneously fire up YouTube, with a green screen strapped to the back of my chair, judging the reaction of the audience in the same manner as a Twitch streamer, watching my participant count go up and down. And I no longer have the crutches of the graduation speeches greats to lean upon because the world is pretty screwed up right now. I can't throw in a little anecdote about how hard things were in my day because we who came before you have endeavored to make everything a little harder for you. The baby boomers who traded revolutions for garish sports coats, protest for overly leveraged McMansions, and who thought they could vote their way back into the racially segmented benefits of sitting on top of a soft empire. The Gen Xers whose disaffection and comfort allowed us to believe that history was behind us, substituting ironic detachment for engagement with the pain of our fellow humans. The reality show stars who became politicians, and the politicians who became reality stars. My friends and I in tech, who took our collective misunderstanding of human nature and baked it into products that hide the textured, complicated realities and broadcast our funhouse caricatures of our worst selves. The bankers who funded all this, and the consumers who, to the detriment of themselves and their children, consumed above all else. So I don't know why you take any advice from me, but I do hope that you've learned a lot from each other, because I know I've learned a great deal from all of you. There's something special about this cohort, the first one to graduate from this retooled international policy program. And the best way I can describe the feeling I get from working with all of you is grit and purpose. These are both things that you all brought to the program. And it's not something I can say about all of the undergrads who used to pop back into my office back in what feels like the mid-19th century. Now, it isn't the undergrad's fault. The system that whittles them down to an applicant pool of 4% requires them to be bleached of the ability to have independent thoughts, starting with their observed Lego exercise to get into private preschool. But I don't get that feeling from MIP students. You're not only the most well-traveled and cosmopolitan people I've ever met, but so many of you have chosen the hard paths that were guaranteed to bring you into contact with the reality that most people spend most of their lives avoiding. Whether in the Peace Corps, the Army, the United Nations, the World Bank, a dozen NGOs, or working with people in your own hometown. This is a group of people who have put themselves in situations where they knew the scales would be lifted from their eyes and that the immense challenges of our planet would become manifest. You have worked to reduce the risk of nuclear war. You've represented the least privileged in systems that sap them of their fundamental human rights. You've built systems to fight food insecurity, and you've given hope to children, both in the classroom and in the streets. You've all chosen to create situations where you know you could fail, and through both your failures and successes, you have granted yourself grit, which is something that can't be taught. And now I doubt that you think that that grit that you gained, putting your hands into the reality in Jakarta, Nairobi, Vienna, Manila, Kabul, Ulaanbaatar, Shanghai, or Abidjan would be so necessary to survive the MIT program in sunny with a slight breeze making you carry a light sweatshirt at Stanford. I'm not going to pretend that the rough patches you faced were intentional choices, meant to break you down and rebuild you as analytical policy Marines. But it does turn out that this has served a purpose. You, the first cohort, are the ones who have really built this program. You have shaped it with your effort and your feedback, your complaints and your gentle suggestions during office hours. I have learned much from you, and I want to thank you personally for making me much better in the classroom and in the lab. And I expect that the entire faculty wants to thank you for building this degree and setting an incredibly high bar for those of you who will follow. That's a legacy that will last a lot longer than a bench in a courtyard with a faded brass plaque that reads a gift from the class of yada yada. And it's a legacy you should be proud of. And that grit and purpose is what gives me a little bit of hope, along with the bridges that you have built with people who are very different from you over the last couple of years. Family and friends, as you watch the slideshow, pay attention to not only where these students have been, but the impactful roles where they are going to make their mark. If they are half as successful in their careers, understanding those who are different from them and deploying their manifest talents to the betterment of others, as they have been in this program, then I think there is a bit of a bright light at the end of this tunnel. I'm really sorry that I haven't been able to see all of you for this last day, but I do hope our paths cross again. Assuming that I don't get fired for this speech, please do come revisit Stanford when it reopens in the fall of 2023. Come upstairs to the 4th floor of Encina Hall, wrap your beautiful, young, asymptomatic immune system in Tyvek and N95, and enter through my personal office airlock, because I would like to shake your double-gloved hand. I'd like to hear about your continued success, and I'd like to thank you for what you've taught me and what you have built here at Stanford. I want to thank you not just for me, but for all of the people whose lives I know you will make a bit better, whether they know it or not. Thank you for this honor to be with you today. Thank you for your friendship, and congratulations to the class of 2020.